Yeah, this is a major issue, and it's a major ruling on an issue that has come to the EU's High Court several times over the past 15 years. But until today, the court did not want to wade into it. Well, today they did in a big way. As you mentioned, the EU is quite divided on the subject of gay marriage. We have a situation here like existed in the United States before 2015, where some member states have gay marriage and other member states do not. It's an east-west divide. All of the countries of Western Europe have it except for Italy, and all of the countries of Eastern Europe do not have it except for Estonia and Slovenia. But lots of cases were brought to the EU's High Court over the past years saying that this constituted a violation of free movement rights that all EU citizens have to live and work anywhere in the Union. Because if, in order to move to another EU country, you have to effectively invalidate your marriage, that constitutes a big burden. The court sided with that argument today, specifically in this case of a gay couple who had been married in Berlin in 2018, then moved to Poland, and Poland refused to recognize that marriage under Polish law. The court told Poland today that they have to do that. So this is a pretty big development for gay people in countries like Hungary, Romania, Poland, who for the very first time will be able to have a same-sex marriage recognized in this particular circumstance. The big question is whether this ruling also applies to people who simply just travel to another EU member state to get married. Because while this couple in this case was resident in Germany when they got married, you don't need to be resident in Germany to get a marriage license there. In fact, that's the case for most EU countries. You can get a marriage license simply if you have a destination wedding in one of these countries. So the question is, if someone in Poland simply just crosses the border into Germany, gets married, comes back, does Poland need to recognize that marriage? The ruling is a bit vague on that. Talking to legal experts today, they say Poland could maybe get around this issue by specifically changing its transcription rules to say that it will only recognize foreign marriages performed in a place where the people actually lived, but they would have to apply that to all couples, including heterosexual couples, in order to not violate this ruling.
Now, some governments in Eastern Europe have already spoken out against what being made to recognise same-sex unions. So as a result, how are they going to challenge this ruling?
Yeah, this is going to be very tricky because 7 EU countries actually have constitutional bans against gay marriage. Those were passed over the past 20 years specifically to thwart this type of court ruling. As we've seen in many European countries, in the United States, where the courts, without a constitutional amendment defining marriage as between a man and a woman, the courts are able to say that it is a right for people to have equal marriage. So this is going to be a very tricky question of whether EU law has primacy. Effectively, does this court order contradict the constitutions of these Eastern EU countries? Now, the courts very specifically, very painstakingly laid out in its ruling that they are not requiring these countries to change their domestic laws, that the countries do not have to perform gay marriages themselves. However, I think those Eastern governments are going to come back and say, but you are in fact making us change our laws because you are making us change our policy about recognizing same-sex marriages that were performed elsewhere in the European Union. So that itself could result in a legal challenge. The other question here is whether the European Commission is willing to enforce this, because, of course, when the EU High Court makes a ruling, it's up to the Commission to come forward with infringements in order to enforce it. Not exactly clear if Commission President Ursula von der Leyen has an appetite to try to enforce this. So there's still a lot of questions hanging in the air about this, particularly in how these Eastern EU governments will react to this ruling, but it could throw up some very, very thorny legal issues.
Dave Keating reporting there from Brussels. Thank you. Now, a year after the trial of Giselle Pellico,